Just before I hand over the session to you, I'll just introduce both of you to the audience, and then I give the stage to you, if it's okay, sir, ma'am.
Absolutely.
Okay. So our guest for today, Miss Palki Sharma Upadhyay. So basically, I am privileged to introduce our guest. She is a renowned journalist and news anchor. She is currently working with Network18 as a managing editor. In her previous role, she was managing editor at WION. There, she used to host Gravitas, which was a very popular primetime English news program. She also conceptualized and oversaw the WION Global Summit. Ma'am has over 21 years of experience across several media houses, including ITV Network, Network18, Doordarshan News, and Hindustan Times. In her career spanning over 2 decades, she has interviewed several national and international heads of state. She has also covered essential stories and events on the ground, including the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, the Quad summits in Tokyo and Washington, D.C. She has been taking journalism up a notch. The New Age anchor has fast emerged as one of the most impactful journalists in our country. So, ma'am, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome you to E-CONCLAVE 2020 on behalf 22. I beg your pardon, on behalf of E-Club IIT Bombay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I'll now introduce Miss Karen. She is a social entrepreneur, mentor, writer, and a speaker. She firmly believes in the power of citizenship, entrepreneurship, and partnership for addressing some of the world's most pressing issues. A self-professed academician at heart, she has designed multiple theories and models based on RISE shared values, which are responsible, inclusive, sustainable, and eco-friendly, for driving positive action by individuals and institutions. So, ma'am, stage is all yours. Please take it forward.
Thank you so very much, Maharishi. And Palki, thank you so much for being here. I know it's a big moment. You can already see in the chat, big fan. So you already have many of them right here welcoming you along with me. So, I quickly did a search, of course, to kind of see what is written about you, even though I do know about you. And, the thing that comes up is always journalist, editor, that's the main thing that keeps coming up with different designations in different places. And after going through it, I realized that there would be 3 words that I would like to kind of ascribe to you. And maybe you might want to think about it more in your profiles going forward as a media person, right? More than a journalist or an editor, I think you're a media person, and you've done that in so many ways. The second is an entrepreneur. Again, you have your own brand, and we'll talk about it very shortly. And the last, but perhaps the most important, is a woman, right? And I think what you said very recently has reverberated literally, right, on multiple platforms. And so for me, these are the 3 personas, if you may. I would like to kind of talk to you a little bit about that. Do you think that works?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you for this very generous introduction. And thank you, IIT Bombay. And I know we have a lot to talk about, but since we're talking on this day, I want to start by, I think, paying homage to the people we lost on this day in 2008. On 26/11, India, of course, suffered its worst ever terror attack. And some of the perpetrators are still out there. And they're yet to meet justice, yet to be punished. And every year on this day, we say never forget. But I think somewhere we do forget for the rest of the year what needs to be done. And I hope and wish that there comes a day when we are meeting again with students and with you, and we say that justice has been served. And I think that's a conversation that I also look forward to. But thank you for the introduction and having me here.
Thank you once again. We are thrilled to have you with us. And this being an entrepreneur forum, I think I'll start first with the middle ground. People tend to look at the beginning and the end. Let's do something different and start with the middle ground. So as an entrepreneur, I mean, you've done so much in your career and your life, and our fans over here are testimony to that. But as an entrepreneur, what bit you to kind of take that as a side track in your career, and how did it get started?
What I launched as an entrepreneur,
Yes,
and
yours, the sari brand.
to take it forward. I'm again. You guys are very generous to have me here. I've not delivered as an entrepreneur at all. I started something. I mean, I do have a lot of takeaways from that experience. Very important life lessons. I think I left because see. I'm sure there are people who are very focused and who know from the very beginning what they want to be in life. Um, I was never one of them. I'm still not. You know, and so that's a problem, but that's also an opportunity because you can be a lot of things, right? And you have this one lifetime to be able to fulfill all of those things and dreams and desires, and to become all the people, all the versions of yourself that you want to be. You know, you had some words, I have some words, someone else may describe me. For my children, I'm their mother. For my parents, I'm their daughter. So how do you do justice to all the roles that you think you're capable of doing? That is one. um, so I started a sari brand that I had thought about for many years. um, and I wanted to do it, A, because see, I did not set out to be a journalist. I always say that I did not choose journalism, journalism chose me. And I was adopted, and I liked being there. And so I stayed there for a very long time, much longer than I thought I would. You know, when I started, it was just good pocket money. So I thought, why not? And then one thing led to the other, and so it moved. Um, but there came a time, which I've discussed in my previous interviews as well, when I thought that this is not leading to something. You know, do you work only for money? Do you work only to be seen on the screen? Do you work only to, so are you a journalist or an activist? Is someone really, are you changing anything for anybody, or are you just filling a slot? So I thought I was just filling that slot, and I don't want to do that for a very long period of time. I want to try something else. But like I said, that entrepreneurial journey, however short-lived it was I think the most it was a seminal moment for me, or a period. It changed a lot for me. I learned how friends disappear or stop being friends when you're not in a position to influence things for them. I learned how difficult and how fulfilling it can be to make a fresh start. I also learned that to have a goal without having a strategy is not enough. I read somewhere, and that line has stayed with me, that a goal without a strategy is just a wish. So I think I started with just a wish and not a good strategy, and it did not fly. And I came back to my first love, as it became over the years, journalism. But but I did explore a new world. You know, there's a very famous Chinese saying that um, you cross the river by touching the stones. You know, you experience and you make your path. That's what I was doing, and I think it
Great.
it
Thank
all
you.
ended well, I think.
Thank you so much for that honest, heartfelt, I think, rendition of what you've gone through. Because I think, in this day of Elon Musk and of course before that Steve Jobs, as Sanjay spoke earlier, I think we only see these great successes, and we really don't talk enough about failures. And it's not about failures, as you said. It's about the experiential part of touching the stones, right? And
Yes.
learning from it. And I'm sure that journey has, as you said, has given you experiences that you will take with you for the rest of your life. So I think that's a great lesson you've already given to our young budding entrepreneurs, and who sometimes come in with a very great starry eyes, not realizing what it takes sometimes. And also, of course, as you said, realizing when and what is required, and sometimes to cut back. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. I think it means a lot to all the youngsters that we have.
Thanks.
So let me go on now to the media person, your primary, as you said, over the period, your first love now. Um, and as I said just now, you've done so much, and you have kind of literally changed the way international news, English international news, is really being seen by most media segments. Where do you see really that change coming in? And that's why I said media and not just about, journalists from a particular channel or a particular stream or where do you see media really taking us and the change that it can have, especially given the tough times we are going in through today? Whether it is on the climate change front, the economics, the wars. I mean, there is just so much happening. Where do you really see that role of media?
I think the media is supposed to be a dispassionate chronicler of events. We are without realizing it, writing our history for posterity to see. But we are also viewing the world through our own lenses. Some people may call it bias, and I think we will. I've not had a discussion on bias. So I'll come to that. But the media is seeing the world and filtering the events and and trying to shape the narrative, as it were. There are a few things in this. One factor is that the media at the end of the day is also a business, right? We need to make money to survive. And so we depend on some things to make that money. There's ad revenue, there's subscription, there's syndication, all sorts of things. And there are no free lunches and everything. All money comes with strings attached. And it is a fact of life. And I think viewers are smart enough to discount that fact. All over the world, the media is owned by somebody. For all the moral high ground that a Washington Post takes, it's owned by Mr. Bezos. So that's that. The second thing is that I am a firm believer of the fact that the viewer is very smart. Thank you for all the hearts. I can see them coming out on my screen. I really appreciate it. But I have always believed that people are very smart. The consumer really is the king, and that holds true for us also. So people see through propaganda. People see through any agenda that is being pushed, and they'll know how to discount it. So the best we can do is tell a story the way we see it. And for instance, if somebody asks me, I always say I'm not unbiased. I am biased. I have a bias towards India. I have a bias towards the global south. I have a bias towards the underdog. I have a bias towards the people who are working as against big corporates. All the pre-independence media in India was biased towards our freedom movement and against the British. So does that sully them? It doesn't. We're working for an agenda. So we have to look at all of these things, and we have to consciously. The only thing that sets us apart from, say, an FMCG product is that we have to be more ethical. There is
transparent.
More.
I'm sorry, I just thought. Would you say transparent would be the word? Ethical might. How would you compare the two?
So you're shaping minds, you're shaping perspectives.
Sure.
Right, and that is more than you can. A packet of biscuit can have the calories and the ingredients written, and that's that. Right. But our work is more than the sum of what we put out.
Yeah.
And we have to always be conscious of that. When a young child sees a story, you don't know how it is impacting her thought process. You always have to know. And that is a responsibility that the media needs to take more actively, I think.
Right. So, when you talk about bias, okay, it's always got a negative connotation, right? And right now, what you are trying to say is, as you said, don't sully somebody because of their bias, is that there is something positive. So would you say that this is because you take a stand? That your bias then becomes very obvious, yeah, but not necessarily that it has to be negative. It is absolutely, actually very, very appropriate. And more so because I think media therefore has the role to give the voice to the voiceless. Is that maybe what you would maybe say it equates to with bias, or how would you then say taking a stand,
I get
giving
you.
voice to the voiceless?
Okay, so there are uncomfortable truths in our world.
Right.
And are we going to give voice to those truths? We all celebrated the fact that pharma companies came up with vaccines real fast, right? And we paid a lot of money to get those vaccines. Um, it was a there was a time when all of us thought that if I get that shot, that is the difference between life and death. And to that extent, I think kudos to them for being able to deliver at a time when the world was really looking at them for help. But after all of this is past us, should we also look at how these companies have themselves profited? Have we been like, have we just stopped thinking about what is the after effect of that? If you question it, do you become an anti-vaxxer? Right? There are a lot of dimensions to a story that you need to explore. And I think that's what independent but biased media can deliver. So I'm not sure if I've been able to answer your question, and it's a very complicated subject, but I have
Absolutely.
never hidden my biases.
No, absolutely. And I think just by what you say, you're already making people think and question what they stand for. And I think that's a great beginning, even if we cannot get to the depth of the subject given the short time. But thank you so much for sharing that with us, of course. The other thing I did do was look up a few of your videos, of course, to kind of understand a bit more. And I was quite taken with some of the titles, right? One was on financial literacy, the other was on what's happiness for me. And I'm just thinking, as a journalist, why are these important issues, right? As someone with a very influential voice, what is it that you really feel so strongly about, especially these two issues?
Financial literacy, honestly, I'm not an expert. I was called for an event, a FICCI event in Hyderabad, and I said, okay, if it's about, I'm just happy to talk and say this was financial literacy for women specifically.
Right.
But once I started reading, and as a journalist, one is always curious. No 2 days are the same, all stories are different, and we are expected to know everything about everything, which is not true. So we have very good teams that inform us, that correct us all the time. And then it got me thinking, and I always feel that every story has a philosophical dimension. That you should dig deeper and try and understand that how will this translate into an average person's conversation. So I go back to the stories or the conversations that I've had as a child or overheard as a child. So in my home, while you pray to Goddess Lakshmi, like most Hindus do, when she's the goddess of wealth, we are also told don't chase money, paisa haath ka mail hai, right? And it's a very conflicted relationship with money, and we've not been able to navigate it. And we are taught geometry and algebra and all sorts of things, which I'm sure are very important. But I think managing money is a life skill. Just like riding a bicycle is taught when you're a child, I think budgeting, managing money is something that we all need to learn, and we don't learn enough of. So for me, news is not just what's happening today or now, or based on an event or a statement made by a leader. I think it's also a commentary or an observation about issues that impact us as people. And then those become evergreen stories. Happiness is something that we've always chased for eternity, right? And that is the pursuit that all humans have, all thinking beings have. And yet, what does it mean for you? And I've read some great things about it after I did that story. Um, Again, one of the things that stayed with me is that happiness is not a fact. a factor so much of your circumstances as of your outlook in life. So I just thought that this is an interesting thing, and I want to share it with my viewers. And I always go blind into these stories, because when I go to the table and tell my team, okay, today you have to write about happiness, and they're like, really? Where are we going to get the but they always rise up to the challenge. They always come up with very good research, and they play along, and they've been fabulous that way. But I do push them a lot with some. I'm sure amongst themselves they say she's a little nobody else is talking about these things on prime time, but she wants to. So yeah.
So I'm sorry, I'm going to do a small plug here, but financial literacy and actually we don't call it happiness, we call it about peace. We kind of equate it with that. But these are topics which are very close to my heart, and it's very core to the work we do. And so I'm sorry, but that was a bit of a plug.
Maybe I can learn from you.
No, not at all. I'm sure there's a lot we can share. So to come to what you just ended with about your team, right? And talking about how perhaps they have their own ways of looking at things. And of course, they come up to speed for your work. How important is the team behind you for the success of especially a founder or a celebrity or anybody who really is a influencer, right? There's a lot that goes on in the back end, and sometimes we don't know enough of that or don't really acknowledge enough of that. So maybe your thoughts on that.
They're the most important people. They're most important people in the work I do, apart from my family, of course, who put up with all the stories that I tell them, whether they want to listen to them or not. They are really, I think I've been really lucky that way, that I've had good teams throughout my career. I've been surrounded by people, and by a good team, I mean a team that can challenge you. Colleagues who can come up to you and say, I read this, and maybe you should read this too, and this is very important. And they don't have to be they can be your subordinates, they can be your seniors, they can be your contemporaries. People who, if I come up with a story, and it's happened to me way too many times for me to not say it here, that I read something somewhere and I come and people tell me I'm not going to write it. I will not write it because I don't think it's correct. It doesn't add up. And I think they're all doing me a favor, because they are saving me from putting out something that is wrong, or that they think is wrong. Eventually we all agree to do what we agree to do. But that healthy debate and conversation that we have in the meeting before we start working on the show is, I think, the most important time of the day for me. Over the years, a lot of them that I worked with very closely have also attuned themselves to, they know what I'm not going to be okay with. Because I'm experimenting, and a lot of times just saying, okay, let's give it a shot, and I don't have a plan. And for them to not walk out on me is, I think, a favor that all of them do to me. They write fabulous things. It's a it's a fast moving scenario in a newsroom. You have a show at 9 o'clock, at 8:30 you say, maybe we should lead with this and not this, and I want to add such and such thing. Right. And it's a very high pressure situation for them, but they always deliver. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what I do without them.
Absolutely. And I think teams are that's exactly the value of teams, even for entrepreneurs, right? Whoever it might be, that requires to be showing a public face, you need to have a good back end that allows you to kind of do that. I'm just going to stretch that a little bit more, because a lot of people tend to, you spoke about contemporaries, and for entrepreneurs, talking about co-founders, or how do you relate with maybe competition or people who are not directly with you, right? How do you really deal with those kind of situations when it may not be as comfortable as you might want it to be?
Yeah. How do you deal with competition? You respect them for their strengths, and make a strategy that works for you. I think in my initial years, because I was learning, and I was seeing a lot of people do better than me and make things appear very easy, but I'm sure they were not. I'm sure there's a lot of hard work that went into it. I mean, I I learned that you cannot be what you're not. Right? You bake with the dough that you have. So it's good to know your dough, right? It's good to know what you can do and what you cannot do and build from there. The second thing that I've learned is that wishing for someone else to not do well is never going to translate into your success. So you can only hope for a better performance the next time. And all days are not the same. And in our business, especially, we are measuring views in real time. And we learn in real time what is working and what is not. So you have to constantly, I think for me, the focus for a long time has not been so much on competition as on the consumer. And I think I want to be more aligned and in tune with the people who are watching me and what they're saying about me. Because, if they're giving me their time, then I have to deliver for them more than anyone else.
I think that is so beautifully put. I love that. The cake was, of course, fantastic. I mean, you can't be more simple than that to say that, you can only bake the cake you have with the dough you have. So that's fantastic. I think that comes out very clearly. And I think, yes, about competition for sure. I think you never can raise yourself up by pushing someone else down.
Yes.
It just never lasts long enough. So thank you for sharing that. I think there'll be a lot over here, youngsters who will learn some real life lessons from what you are just now sharing with them. But some of them want to know some functional skills and lessons from you as well. So, of course, a compliment put in that, ma'am, how did you develop such superb communication skills? Please tell us your journey and how did you start initially? So, well, I took up your question, Om, and over to you, Palki.
How did I start? I started because my mother thought I could do everything, and she put me on the stage when I was very young, and I had 2 left feet, and she put me on a dance show. And for years, she made me dance. I can't dance to save my life, but she put me on the stage for pretty much everything, and she said, "You can do it, and let's try it." And so I was very nervous, very shy, but at a very young stage in my life, I learned to live with stage fear, not conquer it. I still have butterflies when I go on the screen, and I don't want to get anything wrong. But but I've learned to live with it. And the other thing that works is that when you have a good grasp on your subject, then you automatically become more confident. So I think my lifeline all these years has been the books that I read, and I read them like my life depends on them. And I have learned so much. English was not my first language. I don't come from an English-speaking family, as it were. I mean, they know English, but that's not our language of day-to-day communication. So for me to be in an English news channel where a lot of things are written on the teleprompter, as I'm sure all of you know, but a lot of things are not written, and news develops, and you have to talk, and you have to have the vocabulary and the subject knowledge of a lot of things to be able to have that conversation. Because on the other side is invariably an expert who may be kind and not call you out, but is quite capable of also sort of calling your bluff and saying that you have no idea what you're talking about. And a lot of us end up exposing ourselves. So your only strategy is to be prepared. So that's, I think reading and just keeping at it, and constantly constantly working on yourself. I think there should never be a stage where you think that, okay, this is it. Yeah, so I guess that should answer it.
Talking about all these people who you have interviewed and spoken about, etc. Are there any categories you put them in? Is there something that you, while talking to them, you feel like, oh, okay, that's kind of person, or do you make those kind of judgment calls later or earlier? Is there some traits that really catch your eye about why a person is who they are? You know.
Yeah. Um, I think in my interaction over the years with people who have been successful in their fields, I have found some common traits. I could say one of them is conviction. They are all very sure about uh, what they have done, and by that I don't mean that they're some of them are pompous, but most of them are. They know what they bring to the table, and that's a very big trait, right? And the second I've seen is perseverance. You may be very gifted, but you won't go very far in life if you don't um, if you don't keep at it. You know, I tell my children all the time that Sachin Tendulkar was gifted, but you know, after he retired in his first interview, he said that he was asked, "What did you do?" And he said, "I woke up and I did not have to go for training today, and I made tea for myself and my wife." And I said, "Look at that man. I mean, every day he would have got up at a certain point in time and gone and pushed himself." And so I think in your profession, you have to, in your mind, be on that treadmill and 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 go back despite failures, despite setbacks, and keep at it. I think perseverance is very important, and I've seen um, the third thing that inspires me about people who make it big are is the fact that they learn the rules only to figure out how to break them. It's very important to be able to bend or break, because how else will you stand out in a crowd of the 8 billion that our world today is? But to break the rules, first you have to master them.
Wow,
So
that was fantastic. I have learned something new. I can tell you that. That was beautiful because I think more than anything is, when most people talk about confidence, right? That people are confident. But I think, you really, really put it in context and really, really made it so much more clearer when you say it's about conviction, right? It's not just about putting on a strong face or putting on a, sharp uh, suit and looking very, savvy, but it's really about knowing what you are doing. And thank you. I think again, some amazing lessons for all of our youngsters over here and some oldsters, as I said.
thank you. Very
so
kind.
so I'm going to come, because we're coming to almost the end. I'm going to come to the third part about you, right? And that is about being a woman. Um, and I guess a woman in both avatars, right? As a media person and as an entrepreneur. And then, of course, as you pointed out, the various other roles you play as a mother, daughter, all the other roles that you play. What does it really mean to be a woman? Yeah. And how do you see that um, as a formative part of who you are?
It's the toughest question you asked me today.
I'm
What
glad.
does it mean to be a woman? Um, I think I think one of the gifts that I think nature has given us as women is the strength that we have. We may not realize it, but all women are essentially very strong and capable of taking more pain. Um, Whether or not we accept it, whether or not we know it, um, that is one. Every time, in my last interview I spoke about sexism and what happens in newsrooms, etc., and some people said that you achieved so much and you can't be playing victim. But when we highlight those things, I'm not coming from the play. I'm not a victim. I have never thought of myself as a victim. I'm a fighter. And when I say that there are so many other women, I think they're fighters and survivors. So we're calling out a system that needs to be more open and sensitive to half of humanity, right? I think I think that's what it means for me, that as a woman, I can be so many things. I can I can create life, um, and I can play so many parts. So I love being who I am, I think.
Thank you again. Wonderfully put. There is a question, and I'm going to try and quickly try and see what questions we can take. But one, this is really interesting and saying, what were the difficulties you faced when starting out in your career? And maybe still even now. So,
Yes, what are the difficulties you face? I was new to the city. I had no friends here. Nobody in my entire khandan, as they put it, was a journalist before me. So there was nowhere I could go for advice on this particular matter. So that was one. I think I just there was a lot of experiential learning. There was no template that I could follow. That's one. Um, the second is like I said, to carve a place for yourself um, in a, I wouldn't say a man's world, but a world where you have to work a little more than the other gender to achieve. So that what what other difficulties did I face? Yeah, I don't know. When I came to Delhi and I told my parents that I'll do something, and they were not convinced about this. They thought that I'll come back in a month or two. And because one has lived in such a or had lived in such a controlled and protected environment, a week into being here, and this was summer, this I took a bus to Delhi the day I finished my last exam. I did not want to wait. I thought, okay, let me just go and do something. And a week into it, I fell ill because of the heat, and I was not used to that. And I was staying with some relatives, and I remember sitting there weeping like an idiot and saying, just don't tell my parents, because they will think I've fallen ill and they'll call me back. So I think a lot of those insecurities, I mean, now that I look back, I feel was so silly, but a lot of insecurities plague you when you start out. But what works for young people more than the more experienced ones is that there's this font of optimism.
sure.
And that's contagious, and that really takes you far. So even if nothing is adding up, you sit and you think, oh, maybe I'll be that person one day. How? I don't have a plan. I don't know how, but I'll do it. So I think yeah, that's that.
I think that's great advice because, and I think you mentioned somewhere in a previous interview about mentoring and role models. So, have there been any mentors or role models that you'd want to maybe share a little bit with us, or what should you go about doing to identify the right kind of mentors and role models?
I think there's a very long list: teachers, editors, colleagues, seniors, and people in my family. Um, I'm a very strong believer in the Guru Shishya Parampara. And I believe that there's a reason why we all should have a guru. Today, in today's parlance, we call it a mentor. Um, but you see, so in sports, even Roger Federer at the top of his game will have a coach. But we leave coaches behind the moment we find a job. I think it's important to have people around you who will encourage you when you're down, and who will anchor you when you're flying too high and tell you that now you're going to stumble. So don't go down that road. So a mentor, a coach, a guru can come in any form or shape, but I've had very many of them around me, and consciously so. I have cultivated that. I am still in touch with some of my teachers, though I left their classrooms more than 2 decades ago. Um, so yeah, I'm not going to give names because I fear if I leave out one, it won't be fair or nice.
I
But
know.
it's a very long list, and I have learned a lot from very many people, and not just professionally, but otherwise, how to conduct yourself in life and how to face adversity, I think. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So here again, someone has asked, what is the biggest achievement you feel you've achieved as a journalist?
Oh, getting people on Instagram to watch news.
Wow.
I think there's a different audience. No, I think whenever a young person walks up to me and says, otherwise I don't watch news, but I watch your story, I feel a huge sense of achievement. Because they are really spoiled for choice, all of you guys. You have the world on your fingertips. You can just click anything, do anything, watch anything. But if you're watching the stories that my team and I are putting out for you, then we must be doing something right, and I'm really moved. I think that's my biggest achievement, the vote of confidence from the people who watch us.
That's amazing. So, okay, one more very, very serious question is about employment in India. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Actually, I'll just add to that if you don't mind. Not just employment, but also entrepreneurship, because I think at the end of the day, they go together. Yeah.
So there are different Indias. There is one India that is looking for government jobs, and that is waiting endlessly for vacancies to open. And see, the government is meant to run a country and not to beyond a point. If you're really good at something, then find a life for yourself. You will protest against the same government that you think should employ you. It is not a birthright for anyone, I think. No, I mean, you have to be you have to be worth that seat. So I know this is a little, yeah, it may not go well with people, but yeah, I think that's my take on government jobs and people who don't wait, find something else. um, we are in a very interesting phase, I think, as a country and as a people, because the world is looking at us. We can experiment, we have lots of success stories. We can try things and we can fail fast and then restart. So I think this is the age when, and if not now, then when. So if you have an idea, go for it. I can talk about the media space. There was a time when we needed a big channel to carry our content. There was a time when we needed distributors. We needed that entire system to be able to say anything. But today, if you have a smartphone, you can have your YouTube channel. You can say what you want to say. Technology has made things so easy. Just this is the time, I think.
Excellent. So the last question over here, and then I will hand it over back to the team, is really talking about what are the kind of changes that should happen in Indian media. And I'm not going to read out the entire question, but so that we really have, and to kind of go full circle back to where we started, is to really kind of make it that independent, though biased, as you put it, positively biased media that will hold people accountable and make sure we really have a functioning society.
Learn to pay for news, I say. Subscribe. If you don't pay, someone else will. So if you want the media to work for you, the viewer, then you have to pay.
I think that's you don't pull any punches, for sure. So I think that was a fantastically put thing. And I think, as they always say, if anything is free, then you are the product, right? As
Yes.
this always. So I think that's something we really need to learn. And you rightly pointed out even earlier that there are no free lunches, right? And expecting one as a right can only be detrimental for you and others around you. So thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure. I thoroughly enjoyed this, and I do hope that you did too. We've learned a lot, both, as I said, the youngsters and me as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it over back to the team and look forward to learn more and hear more from you.
Thank you so very much. Thank you. I really enjoyed it, and I hope it was worth everyone else's time as well. Thanks.
Karen ma'am, Palki ma'am, thank you so much for this amazing discussion. I'd like to thank you for finding time and addressing students on a weekend. I'm sure that everyone had something to learn from the discussion and someone is taking something home. And Karen ma'am, thank you so much for helping us moderating this discussion. Have a great weekend. Thank you again.
Bye.